Well, if I need to feel any older, I check the Facebook feed in the morning, Russ, and it says 36th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
been a
mean,
while.
yeah, I mean, and I think I've told the story before on the webcast, but I'm one of the probably the few people in the U.S. But anybody who's living on the border who could get CBC or CT. I can't remember if it was CBC or CTV. I saw that game live. I
Yeah,
think it
we
was
were all watching tape delay on Why World of Sports, right?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember. It was a Friday, I think.
yeah. All I remember is that I bet my brother. I told you, and I won money. So that was the one thing. That's my great memory of the game. Besides the game, and but it is hard to believe it's that many years ago. Although I think Canadians call the Miracle on Ice, maybe one of their great curling comebacks, but I'm not sure.
But it was I believe it was Don Chevrier who was the play-by-play announcer, and he was a really good play-by-play. He was a quality
What
play-by-play
did he
announcer.
say when the time was ticking down, though? Because he didn't touch Al Michaels. I can tell you
I,
that.
honestly, I don't remember. My memory's good, but it's not that good. But obviously Al
I'm going to
Michaels.
recreate Don Chevrolet because he's obviously Canadian, right? And the Americans are winning, and they didn't, and so it's going to be like the Americans won, eh?
Actually, you know what? For
That was
people
his call.
for people out there, if there's a YouTube video of the Canadian broadcast of that game, I've been dying to see that. If there's just the email or send me a message if you go into my blog and hit contact, you can send me a message. Send me a link of that YouTube because I'd like to see that. But I saw it 36 years ago, and then remember watching the replay of the game after already watching it later that night on my black and white TV in my basement with my dad and my brother. I think it was one of them at least was there. And the funny thing is, I remember you remember that Madison Square Garden game where they played the Russians and they got annihilated.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, that wasn't on live. I remember reading about it.
Mm-mm. It was on live. It was on USA Network.
Yeah, I
It was
don't know
on,
if I watched that one. I'll be
yeah.
honest. I don't remember.
Yeah, Jim Gordon and Bill Chadwick did the
Gordon and
play.
Chadwick were doing it. I probably watched it.
Yeah, Jim
I
Gordon
just
and
don't
Bill Chad.
remember.
Yeah, I was on the it was on the USA Network, and
Okay.
in Gordon's very unique, shot,
Oh,
score,
yeah.
shot, the goal, and which I
Gordon was great.
love.
And I got USA, so chances are I did watch it then. I just don't remember.
Yeah, and then ABC. I remember Al Michaels did the opening game against Sweden when Bill Baker tied it in the final minute. I was
Right.
watching that, and
I watched that.
Pelle Lindbergh was the goalie for the
He
Swedes.
was.
But yeah, no, it's just I mean we've seen the movie, we've seen the video of the I
Yeah, I
have
interviewed the players, a lot of them. We've all got some autographs. It's fun, and it's funny because it's not just about being an American either. Because I know people from Finland and who obviously they had something to lose, who were still sort of happy for this American team because of just it's the story about the team more than hey the Americans won. I think that's really what got
yeah,
everybody.
it was an inspiring story. And the funny thing is that Team Canada was not a bad now this is obviously before NHL players played.
Right.
But Team Canada was a pretty decent squad in 1980. I think Glenn Anderson was on it. I think Mark Habscheid, a couple other but there was some decent players on that team and they didn't do badly. But yeah, I think it ended up being a US 1, Russia 2, and Finland 3.
Yeah, I think so. The deal was it was
Or
more
Sweden
about
3. Sweden 3.
it was more about the stupid youth that didn't understand how important any of this was, so it didn't get to them. The speed of their youth and the good coaching of Herb Brooks. It really didn't matter about stars. That team, as it shakes out, we know about it long term, had very few stars, but it was more about being a team and just that youth and just that they wouldn't give up.
Yeah, but it had quality depth.
Quality
Guys,
players,
yeah.
but no superstars.
No. So Neil Broughton was a very good NHL
Good
player.
player.
Johnson and Christian and
Ken Morrow, really good player.
Mike Ramsey, really good player. Guys like Kristoff and Pavlich, and
Yeah,
they all made the
but no
NHL.
superstars.
No superstars. Yeah, and Jim Craig had the series of his life.
He did, and that literally was because after that, he wasn't the same goalie, and it didn't matter. Like he had already made his name, so like he was going to get every opportunity everywhere else he went, just because they wanted to have Jim Craig there.
Right. Yeah, and then he went to I think Atlanta, and then he got traded to Boston, and his NHL career was very forgettable.
Oh
Anyway,
yeah.
let's talk about the news of the weekend and the news of the day. And sorry, I apologize beforehand, folks, but it's going to be a lot of Toronto today because they are the epicenter of the hockey universe. Because we're 7 days to go before the trade deadline, and they've made the only 2 rental deals. So here you go. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, February 22nd, 2016.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockeybuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Eklund may be joining us. He is chasing down some rumors. We will have lots of them over the next 7 days, and we're going to have coverage of the trade deadline. I believe we'll harden the schedule later in the week, but I believe we're going to probably go starting at 11 a.m. on Monday the 29th and going through to around 4 or 4:30 as long as the trades keep trickling in. And Russ, as we know, the deals will trickle in after 3 o'clock. You could have deals. Yeah. I think it was that Pominville deal, the one from a few years ago, that came in like 2.5 hours after the deadline.
Yeah, I expect there to be 2 to 3 deals after, because teams will not be sure until that last minute whether they're going to be buyers or sellers, just based on what their record is and and how the organization feels, and injuries and all these things now loom large when you have a cap. When you didn't have a cap, it didn't matter, but now that you have a cap, it matters.
And also, it's like they sometimes will wait until they've contacted everybody in the deal.
Yes, that happens too. You want to contact the next of kin, and but the thing is, like just take the Rangers for example, right? Let's say, for argument's sake, Rick Nash still isn't back. They'll know then whether they're going to put him on LTIR. Let's just say Ryan McDonough is not back. They'll know whether he's back in a week or two or not back. Like this could all affect a team going forward, and so I don't think there'll be anything big happening that early in that day. I think it'll start to trickle in.
I mean, I think we'll find out before the 29th or probably early in the morning if Jeff Gorton decides to, okay, I'm going to put Rick Nash on LTIR and open up $8 million of cap space. Well,
it's like 3.7 for the end of the year.
Yeah, prorated, right.
Prorated.
But see, the thing is that doesn't prevent Nash from coming back for the playoffs. It's just like he sits out the rest of the year.
Right.
And then, lo and behold, I lay my magic hands on Rick Nash's leg, and on April 15th, he's ready to go.
Trust me, I did an article on Peter Forsberg doing that one year with Colorado. What did he play, like 8 games?
Mm-hmm.
And then he played the whole playoffs?
Yeah. No. There's the incredible recoveries are not a unique experience in the NHL. Well, anyway, I was up in Toronto for the Toronto Marlies game against Portland and the Leafs game against Philadelphia, and I actually think I saw more talent on the Marlies than I did on the Leafs. Not to cast any aspersions, but most of the Leaf top players are either suspended or injured.
Yep.
They played a Flyers team without Claude Giroux, and the reason I mention that is because Couturier. And the reason I mention that is because at that game, at the Marlies game and at the Leafs game combined, I think there were about 35 scouts. Now, some of them actually were, same scouts, but I'm telling you, cumulative total was about 35 scouts. So everybody knows that Toronto is going to be a very popular destination for a number of teams at the deadline because pretty much anything goes. And Lou Lamoriello has, as some people predicted, me being one of them, has started to move early. Now, we'll just talk briefly about the deal on Sunday because it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a great big deal. But they move out a Sean Mathias, guy who they signed for a couple $1 million, thinking he would repeat his 18-goal season from Vancouver last year. He had only 6 when they traded him yesterday to the Colorado Avalanche for a 4th-round pick and a minor leaguer named Colin Smith. Russ, I mean, Matthias didn't play as well as the Leafs expected. I think they were hoping that he would have a good year, same type of year as last year, and flip him for a second-round pick or a third-round pick, but they only get a fourth.
Yeah, I mean, Matthias isn't. He had a lucky year. He played with the right players in Van. I think with Colorado, they could, maybe get him a few more goals. But Colorado seems to like the size, and so they're gonna just go with more size as they try and make the playoffs. It's not a bad move for them. They really didn't give up anything. I mean, a fourth rounder and a quadruple A player isn't much. Matthias at least is another guy they could add to their roster in hopes of just being able to squeeze into the playoffs. I mean, I think that's a big deal for Colorado. Like that outdoor game is going to be a big deal for them too, because with all the focus on them, not only do they have to come out with that and with a win, but they can't sort of like get that same sort of hangover that the Canadians did, or their season will be over. Like it's just that close.
It's funny how these outdoor games are going to have more meaning for some of these teams. I mean, Minnesota, they really opened up a can of whoop ass on the Blackhawks yesterday, but they lose Jason Zucker, who was not having a great season this year, sort of up and down. And
it didn't seem like a dirty hit. I'll be honest. I don't think that was an intentional headshot. It was more like a elbow into the chest shot, but because of the size differential, it ended up that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think Roosevelt had any real malice for that. I don't.
No, but I mean, from the Minnesota perspective, from the Minnesota perspective, they're in a tight race right now. They're 1 point out of the wild card spot. They're battling with Nashville and Colorado, and he is one of their more talented forwards. So if they lose him for long term, it'll be a big loss for them. Now the curious thing is the two trades that the Leafs have made have both been Western Conference teams, both who are in tight races. So I think that's what we're going to see, obviously, in the next 7 days. The move this morning. Now, like I said, I thought, especially with Polak being the type of defenseman that he is, meaning he's a really solid bottom pairing guy, a character guy, a guy who can play 20 minutes. He can kill penalties. He enjoys the rough going. He's a character guy, good guy in the locker room. From everything indication, he was the type of guy you would move early because you wanted to get the most value. And the type of defenseman he is, with killing penalties, blocking shots, very easily he could get hurt. And if they lost him before the deadline, that would be a loss of some assets. Well, Monday morning, Lou Lamoriello pulls off a deal with the San Jose Sharks, 2 second-round picks in 2017 and 2018, along with the expiring contract of Raffi Torres, go to the Leafs for Nick Spaulding and for Roman Polak. Now, Russ, I thought they'd get a second-round pick for Polak, maybe a lower pick added on. I never thought they'd get 2 seconds for, they thought maybe they'd get a 5th or 6th-round pick for Spaulding.
Yeah.
2 seconds for Spaulding and Polak is unbelievable.
This is my analogy for this would be like San Jose is that new couple that's getting a mortgage right before the housing market burst. And so they do it, and they're happy about it. And I think after this season, they're going to be like looking at their house, and it's going to be upside down.
Well, it's funny because last year the Leafs make a deal early on. They make the Franz and Santorelli deal, get a first-round pick from Nashville. Nashville was they weren't in a desperate situation, but they wanted to load up on depth. And they were willing to trade their first-round pick and a prospect in Brendan Leipzig to make that deal. And that was the first move of the rental deals last year. And that was Dave Nonis doing that. This year, the Leafs do the same thing. They make the first move. They set the market in a respect. I think they get overpaid for Polak, maybe because they took back the money on Raffi Torres' contract. But they set the market, and now a number of contending teams probably can't be too pleased because now they're going to have to give up a higher value maybe for players that are comparable to the value of Polak and Spaulding.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do. It's interesting. Again, I don't think much of this Sharks team. I really do think that they're a bunch of aging guys going down, and I'm sure the playoff revenue is important, so they're basically trading the picks for at least a round of playoff revenue, and that's fine if that's what they want. That's what they'll get, but they're going to start to diminish pretty quickly, I think. I mean, they have a young goalie, but once they start losing those aging forwards who are their basis of their offense, they don't have a lot of guys to replace them. They got some, and they've got some guys that'll play hard, but they don't have a lot of elite scoring guys. And so I think that's going to be a big problem for them. And so for the Leafs, it's good. Here's the thing with the Leafs. It all sounds great compiling all these picks.
Sure.
But you do have to turn these picks into players at some point and players that stick in the NHL.
Right.
So, of course, the theory is the more you have, the better chance you have. But we've seen, you can go back and look at some drafts, and some teams have just tanked beyond what's really reasonable. And so, Leafs fan is hoping that's not going to happen.
True. I mean, obviously the focus will be on Mark Hunter. The focus will be on Lamoriello to get more draft picks to maybe turn some of these picks into prospects who are ready to step in the NHL. I mean, this is going to be it's going to take time. It really is going to take time, and it's going to test the patience of Leaf fans who expect them maybe next year to be better. I mean, in some instances, Babcock has been saying they may be worse next year because
if they don't get Stamkos and VC, right? Let's just say, for argument's sake, they don't get them.
Right.
I could definitely make you the argument where they'll be worse.
Yes, but that's why I think there's such a focus on getting Stamkos and to a lesser extent VC. I mean, VC will be a rookie, so I mean, you can't put too much pressure on him. No. I mean, I heard Craig Button today on TSN Radio say that right now, if he had to make a decision, he would send Mitch Marner back to London again next year. So
they may do that.
And they may do that, and that's the thing. It's like, it's not unprecedented. You had Max Domi go back for his 19-year-old year and play in the World Junior, and I'm sure Marner will make Team Canada next year. So if they stick with the development model, I don't think they're going to.
It's not even so much, it's not the development anymore, as much as it is just him building up his body, and it takes years to do that. And he doesn't have the kind of days that a college player has to train every day of the week to sort of add muscle and strength. And so that's where this is really going to be a test of that more than, hey, look, if you send Marner back, he's scoring 100 points. Like, nobody's questioning that. But if you put him in the AHL, then you might have some older goon type target him, and he might get injured. And that's what they're sort of trying to stay away from.
Right, and that, I mean, he can't go to the AHL because he's 19. So,
but the ECHL, they could send him there. I'm just saying.
Yeah, they're not, and
you're not going to do that.
And
I heard the overseas argument too. Again, overseas, let's say you send him into, I don't know, a league in Germany or a league in Finland or Sweden. A guy there could target him too. I mean, he's safer in the OHL than he is anywhere else.
Right. So, and he'd be, then sure, I think he's co-captain of London right now. He would be, be a leader, be the captain, whatever. I mean, I think that's the safe course. The funny thing is about this deal is that, again, similar to something that happened last year, Pittsburgh had already traded their first-round pick for David Perron. They wanted Daniel Winnick at the deadline. The Leafs wanted a second-round pick, or they wanted a couple mid-round picks.
Right.
Pittsburgh was willing to give them a second if it was in 2016 rather than 2015, because then they wouldn't have a pick in the first two rounds. This year, with this deal, San Jose doesn't have a third and doesn't have a first. So they didn't want to give up their second-round pick because they wouldn't have a pick in the first three rounds. So they gave up.
Which is something the Rangers had to go through before, and it's tough.
So they had to give up 2 second-round picks in 2017 and 2018 to maybe compensate Lamoriello for that, to keep their own second. But the funny thing also is now with this deal, with this one deal, the Leafs have taken care of the compensation problem for Lamoriello and Babcock, because now they can give up their third-round pick in 2017 and 2018 because they have 2 seconds in each draft.
Right. No, it's good. I mean, it's a position you want to be in, but you still have to succeed in it. And that's the part where I always tell everybody, hey, look, we could all be prospect experts. I feel like I am at times. But the guys that go to make the picks at the table, they'll tell you there's a lot of luck involved. There's a lot of, again, with the player development part, you could pick the right player and he could just not turn into that player based on how that kid is and the drive and everything. You can't predict things like that, what will happen down the road. You hope, you look at his family, you look at all those things, and sometimes they don't work out. So it's not a guaranteed success model for the Leafs, but they're sticking to their plan, and I give them credit.
But one final thing on this, and then we'll move on to or actually two more things, and we'll move on to other teams. The Leafs have 12 picks at the draft in Buffalo that we'll both be at. The flexibility that gives the Leafs, not only, okay, Mark Hunter can go to work, he's got a ton of picks, he can pick anybody he wants, but if there's one guy, and we saw this with Columbus last year, they wanted to move up into the bottom of the first round. The Leafs had traded down with Philadelphia. They had, I think, the last pick in the first round.
Yeah.
But Philadelphia had moved up to get Konechny. The Leafs had moved down to the bottom part of the draft. The Leafs traded the bottom pick in the first round to Columbus and got 3 picks, I believe. I think it was 2 seconds and a fourth, or a second and whatever. It was a package of picks. There will be teams that will say, okay, if I can get extra picks, I'll move down 4 or 5 slots. If there's somebody that Hunter really loves, if they get Pittsburgh's first round pick from the Kessel deal, if Pittsburgh makes the playoffs, they could move up into the teens. They could move up into maybe the top, maybe in 14, 15, 16 by throwing in an extra couple draft picks. Mm-hmm. That gives Mark Hunter, Lou Lamoriello, Kyle Dubas, the entire Leaf staff, that gives them amazing flexibility to be able to, target one player that they really like and go out and get them.
Yeah, they're big players in this draft. I mean, there's no hiding that. There's no way around it. We all know it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's legit. But again, we'll see how they sort of play it. They could also, towards the end of this draft, play out some of those picks and give them to other people for picks in the next draft. Sure. I've seen teams do that too when they're loaded and then they all of a sudden, their board starts emptying out and they're like, you know what? Let's kick it down the road. And so, maybe they won't pick 12. Maybe they'll only go with 10. You don't know. But 10's still a lot.
And you also have to worry about being able to sign all these guys. So,
the contract number becomes the headache then.
Right. You can take a couple guys who are playing in Europe. You can take a couple college guys, and that defers the choice to, for
stashes them
down the road. Yeah. So the other thing, and this is something that will affect other teams too, but it's more noticeable today with this deal, and the Matthias deal. The Leafs cleared over $2 million in salary on the Matthias deal. Took back Smith, the minor leaguer, so that doesn't affect their cap. They trade out almost $5 million in salary in this deal. Did not retain any money at all, and took back the Torres contract, which after being demoted to the AHL was only a little over $1 million in cap room. They just opened up $6 million in cap space. I'm telling you right now, Russ. Maybe it won't be Brian Bickle, but there'll be a deal in the next 7 days where the Leafs take back a significant salary. Now, it might be somebody who they actually want and who is signed long term, but I think it doesn't preclude the possibility of them acquiring a contract like a Bickle, like that Chicago wants to get rid of because they want to open up cap space for another deal. Lamoriello has the freedom to be able to do that, and it doesn't really matter because next year is not going to be a throwaway year, but next year they're going to have plenty of cap space.
Sure. I mean, that possibility exists. We'll see. We'll see what they do. I mean, it's possible, though.
Okay. Now, looking at Eklund's blog now, like I said, he may jump in here, but a couple things stand out. It looks like, and this is not exactly a bulletin to me and you, but it looks like Montreal are going to be sellers now. I mean, I think the loss over the weekend to Philadelphia they won over Philadelphia. No, but I mean, it seems that reality is set in Montreal. That all of a sudden Dale Weiss's name has been mentioned. Mm-hmm. There's talk about Alexei Emelin possibly being traded with a year left in his contract. I mean, I don't really think they're gonna rush Carey Price back if it's all possible. I think
come on, those reports may not be substantiated. They may never get approved by the Canadians. They may never talk about it, but I'm pretty sure we're not seeing Carey Price.
Right. And I think they'll delay as long as possible any kind of moves because they don't want to deal with the firestorm right now. I mean, there is
Right.
a sizable portion of the Montreal fan base that has seen that that reality has struck and that maybe they have a chance of getting a better chance of winning the lottery. But there are so many I mean, they're not mathematically out of it, but they're sort of in that middle ground. They're where the Leafs have been the last 6 or 7 years.
Right.
They're not bad. Their record's not bad enough. Their points are too much to not be able to get low enough to get a high draft pick, but they're not good enough to be in the playoff race.
I could see Weiss going back to the Rangers. I could, because the only reason he left the Rangers is because Tortorella didn't like him. But then all of a sudden Tortorella sort of liked him in Vancouver, right? Because somebody else developed him instead, and he liked him, and so he would fit New York. He was a good player, hard nosed, can score a little bit. Maybe the Rangers trade an RFA for him. Who knows? But I could see something going on there, and they won't have to give up a ton, and they could at least add somebody that's useful to their lineup. I could see it happening because Jeff Gorton was in Hartford yesterday watching what they have down there. And, Nick Jensen, I think, has 8 goals in 18 games, but he didn't do anything in that game, so doubtful he's getting a call-up. Rivik got a call-up, but he's a guy that's just sort of like decent all around, a guy that you could plug in. He's not going to stay there. So chances are they're going to try and get somebody, but they're probably going to do it on the cheap. And they're probably going to do everything they can to not put Rick Nash on LTIR, but we'll see.
Well, Eck has the Rangers, Devils, and Predators as teams that or either have expressed interest in Weiss or would make sense. I would, especially the Devils. I mean, it's funny because I've only heard today, the possibility of the Devils being sellers, and honestly, I don't think
that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I mean, unless they, I think they have 3 games before the deadline. Unless they
but they have to be like 10 games out. Here's the thing. The mood in the building is a lot better, right? When I was there, the attendance is better. They've spent a lot on their pregame stuff. Josh Harris is not going to tell his GM to bail out and sell. Even if they don't make the playoffs, he's going to just tell him, try and make the playoffs, because that's what the message they want to send to the fans. I would be surprised if they go anywhere but that direction.
I agree. I mean, I think they're still in it. They're still in it because they got Corey Snyder.
Yep.
Camilleri's been in and out of the lineup. For them to have a legitimate chance, I think they have to add offense.
They do.
They don't have a great deal of depth in the organization. I mean, there's a couple good prospects.
Pavel Zacha's really good.
Yeah.
Kujawinski's good. After that, it gets a little weak. It does.
But they're not going to trade Pavel Zacha. They're not going to trade him for anything.
No.
I mean, we're talking about them maybe, adding a depth forward or two. Just give them a little more experience, a little more.
They have a lot of defensemen. They could get a decent player for some of their defensemen. They got guys like Josh Jacobs. They have some names down on the farm that are really good. And so that's where they could possibly get somebody better than even a Dale Weiss if they deal one of those guys.
Now, Larry Brooks, and I'm sorry, folks, I have to bring it back to the Leafs again because Larry Brooks put this in his Sunday column yesterday. He floated the idea of a PA Parento for Eric Jelena deal. And other than the fact that, Russ, you said that Jelena is he's a Lou draft pick.
He was a Lou project because he was a forward, right, that they converted to defense who had a really good shot, and they really tried to work him in a couple of years ago, and he's sort of been okay.
Yeah, it's just not. I mean,
but Lou likes him.
Lou likes him, and maybe you see that maybe that's a project that he thinks Babcock can work with.
Right.
But
he has a big shot. He does.
Yeah, when you have the possibility, and okay, how many second-round picks can you have? But when you have the possibility of getting a second-round pick and maybe a prospect for PA Parento, I'm not taking Eric Jelena for him. Especially, he's making a little under $2 million, and he's in UFA after next year. So unless it's like I'm gonna trade a rental for a rental next year.
But you're not thinking like Lou, and that's what I told you off there.
Right.
There are sometimes. Again, can you tell me why Tanner Glass continues to get all this playing time for the Rangers. Could you look at numbers? Can you look at analytics? Is there anything that supports it other than the coach likes him? No, and that's the reason. So sometimes that's what takes precedent.
Suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Now, Eck is writing about Scotty Hartnell again. I watched Columbus play Buffalo on Friday. It was a complete dominant performance by the Sabres. I barely noticed Hartnell on the ice. Russ, I'll depart from Eck here. I'm not disputing. He's being told that Hartnell is being shopped, and I've heard it other places as well. Mm-hmm. If I'm an NHL GM, I'm running. I mean, he's got too much term, too much money, and unless you're trading back another guy who's making sort of the same amount of money, I don't know if I want him.
They could do a salary for salary thing. They could. Here's the thing about Hartnell. I think right now Tortorella has sort of beaten the Scott Hartnell part of his game out of him. Right. And when you don't allow him to have the occasional stupid penalty or the occasional outburst, this other Scott Hartnell is not the same player. I think he can still be effective for a team, and teams know that, but you have to let him loose. That's just the way he is. He's got to play that way. Tortorella doesn't like that, so they definitely will trade him if they can get something for him, because the contract's going to be a little prohibitive, but if they eat half of it or if they go salary for salary, somebody would be interested in Hartnell, because I don't think you're seeing the right Scott Hartnell in Columbus since Tortorella took over and all of the, apologizing to the team and all the other nonsense.
Right. And X says, he mentioned Pittsburgh a couple days ago as a possible. He's saying there's also hearing strong interest coming from the LA Kings.
Yeah, Pittsburgh right now, Pittsburgh's in that boat and the water's filling up.
Yeah. Now, ironically,
they're bailing water. They are.
Ironically, we were talking about Matt Murray on your podcast on Friday. Yeah. And Elliot Friedman from Hockey Night in Canada came out and said that there's been some inquiries about Matt Murray, but that Pittsburgh is loath to move him, which to me makes me draw the conclusion they're going to move him.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that I heard out of Randy Sexton for our XM show interview that told me he had a preference to who he'd move, because he loves them both. And I don't blame him. They're two really good goaltending prospects, and a lot of teams don't have that. However, Murray's a little older. Fleury's contract goes at least another 3 years?
3 years.
So Jarry's 20. So by the time maybe he's 22, he could be the backup, and by 23, maybe have the job. Right. And if they don't extend Fleury, which they probably won't. And so, because they may not even have the money at that point to do it. So if you look at it, it seems like Murray would be the guy to go then. And Murray's closer to the NHL, obviously, and he's built his body up now. He's a workhorse, really talented guy. I think you could get like a second rounder and a player for Matt Murray, a bottom six kind of forward. I think that's what you can get, or get a prospect and a bottom six forward. I think that's what you can get for Matt Murray. I don't think you'll get any first rounders because he's unproven as a starter in the NHL level, but there is some promise there, and so I think you could bring a player and a pick. And look, if I'm Pittsburgh, I could use another bottom six guy. There's no question about it.
Well, the team that has been mentioned in connection with him, at least from the things that I've read and heard, was Calgary, which makes sense because Calgary is looking for a goaltender. They're going to move on from Hiller and Ramo. Gillies was out for the year this year. I think it was hip surgery.
Yeah.
And Ordio, I mean, he's had a couple years to make an impact, and he really hasn't. So I think they're looking to go into a different direction. If they want to go with the young goalie and have the young goalie come up with their young core, a Murray would make a lot of sense. But
maybe they'll go Murray for Yuri Hoodler straight up.
For Yuri Hoodler, I mean,
that could happen.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be a good desperation move for Pittsburgh, because they would get that temporary bump that they've been getting from all these other trades, and then they always seem to sort of level out, though, right? And right now they're at the level out point again.
Well, I think they're finally hurting from the fact that Malkin is not there. It's like, right. I mean, it's been, I believe, over 3 weeks since he's played.
Yeah.
And has there been any indication of what exactly the injury is? I think
I have no idea what the injury is and what the prognosis is. None.
Yeah. I almost said Alan Ladd. Oh my God.
Alan Ladd was a movie actor who did westerns. One of my dad's he did Shane. One of my dad's favorites, but I believe he's long dead.
He's long dead. Yes, he is. But Andrew Ladd, his illegitimate grandson, Andrew Ladd, is probably going to move before the 29th. I mean, there has been a lot of indications that the contract talks between him and Winnipeg are not going anywhere. Eck is reporting that the Rangers may be the favorite for Andrew Ladd. Again, I don't know how the Rangers.
So bad. I mean, let me tell you. I mean, Brooks wrote about the stall factor because hey, if you put Nash on LTIR and you trade Kreider, it's like that is not what you want to do if you're the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers have to look in the mirror and say, is Eric Staal going to win faceoffs? Is he going to play the PK for us? Because we're suffering in those areas. That's not his game. Now Ladd will help a little in those areas, but he's a rental. He's a pure rental. And when you rented for St. Louis, what did you really get back?
You got a trip to the finals, which I think is that's the overriding thing here, Russ, is that the Rangers are a now team, and a now team will do anything to get
Let's
there.
do the leap of faith. Let's say they get the trip to the finals, and they're playing either the Hawks or the Kings. Right. I can tell you right now, there's no chance of winning. I would give them like a 20% chance, which is probably what I gave them the last time against the Kings.
Well, I think you were the one who said that they don't want MSG to go dark.
Right, and that's a factor. Yeah. It's always been a factor in their history. There's no question about it. They do a lot of events there, but they also forecast heavily, and so they want to make money. And so at the end of the day, sometimes making money overrides what you think is a good deal or a bad deal.
Now the interesting thing, you brought up the name of Staal. Carolina's not going anywhere. They haven't dropped out. They're 2 points out of the wild card right now. I mean, I would hate to be in the position of Ron Francis right now because I think, the fan base will react quite negatively.
He's going to have his finger on the plunger that whole day, and just going to be deciding should I or shouldn't I? He's going to have like the Belushi angel and devil on his shoulder. Like it's going to be hard. It's going to be really, really hard. But I still think at the end of the day, he's going to have to deal Eric Staal the same way Pittsburgh dealt Jordan. And it was funny because I remember it happened right before the draft, the day before the draft. We were at the Pirates game, and all of a sudden on the big scoreboard, and again, look, I think the Penguins set this up. On the big scoreboard in center field, while all the NHL people were at the Pirates game, it said it was like Gazette headline, Jordan Staal traded. And it was like a hush over the crowd, And so I think the same thing's going to happen in Carolina. I think they're waiting till the last possible second, but I think they know that even if they make the playoffs, they're a long shot to get out of even the first round, and they might get Staal back.
Well, and that's why I made the Matt Sundin analogy. If they're 2 points out, he's not waiving, unless he is coming back, unless. For sure he's coming back, and he says, okay, in the long-term benefit for the franchise, I'll waive, and you can get a first-round pick and a prospect or two or whatever. But the thing is, it's like I don't know whether Francis. I mean, do you think Peter Karmanos is going to turn down first-round Gates? If they have the opportunity to make the playoff, that's the thing. It's like
but it's still risky.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, that's.
They let it ride, right? If they let it ride and it gets to the point of the draft, I don't know what they would do then, because then we would all expect Eric Staal to come back, but Eric Staal still may decide to test the market. And so what could they get for an Eric Staal and draft rights? Not a lot, I don't think. No. Because I don't think a lot of teams would believe he's leaving.
No, this is not Stamkos. I mean, Stamkos, right. If you're trading his negotiating rights, you're getting players and prospects or picks.
Right.
If you're trading Eric Staal, you're getting what Boston got for Carl Soderberg. I mean, you're not getting a lot. You're getting a third.
Because I don't think the belief will be that this other team could really sign him, right?
Exactly. But, yeah, so, I mean, I mean, that's a difficult situation again that Ron Francis is in, where he's going to have to. You may be right. He may trade like guys like Versteeg and John Michael Lyles because, I mean they're veteran players, but they don't make a great big difference.
Right.
But Stahl is your main cog, is your number one center. Now I heard one of the insiders on one of the broadcasts I was listening to this, I think it was Darren Drager from TSN, mentioned Jeff Skinner as a possibility being moved.
But that rumor's been out there, and he's having a great year again. Yeah. Why in the world would they do that?
Well, to maybe afford to sign Stahl. I mean, unless they're
going to afford to sign, what is Stahl, 31?
31.
And Skinner, 26?
I don't even know if he's that old. 24.
Yeah.
24.
So, I mean, come on.
Yeah,
we have to do the math. At some point, organizations have to do the math and say, look, I know Skinner had some concussion problems. So did Sidney Crosby. He seems to be rebounding from that.
It's concussion problems. It's salary. I think he's making like 5.8 or something like that. He's making a sizable salary. And this is an organization we know with Karmanos as the owner. Financial constraints are a big situation. So
you'll have to have some players, though.
Yeah, I agree. Now, a couple more things in the show, and we'll be back tomorrow, hopefully at 1 o'clock with Act to discuss. Maybe I'm sure there'll probably be some trades tonight.
Here, just as an example, Jeff Skinner's got 21 goals.
Yeah.
How many does Eric Stahl have?
I think he's at 9.
Yeah, it's not even close. Who's the more effective player?
Sure.
Why in the world would I do that?
Well, the thing is, we don't know whether Ron Francis likes Skinner or not. I'm
pretty sure he likes a guy that could score 20-something goals a year. Like, he might get 30 goals, right?
He also may think that he can trade him at his highest value, which is right now for teams that are starved for offense, and get a bigger return than he ever thought was possible. So
what's funny? Here you look at Jeff Skinner.
Yeah,
you look at Jeff Skinner, and I think people marginalize him because of the post-concussion, but in 396 games, he's got 251 points. Mm-hmm. In this NHL, those are really good numbers, and I think regardless of the fact that he doesn't play defense, he's got 22 game-winning goals, and he's got 136 goals. If we were to look up a lot of guys in his age group in that money area, he's one of the more productive if you think about it.
Yeah, and his speed hasn't dropped off. He's still a very young player. He's not even I don't think he's even in his prime yet.
Actually, he's 23, going to be 24. So, how could you can't – they can't trade him. They can't. I think Elliot Friedman is way off base on this.
No, I don't think it was Elliot, but
whoever it was, I think they're way off base because I think at the end of the day, Eric Stahl isn't going to sell any more seats tomorrow than he's selling today. But Jeff Skinner is going to help them win games more than Eric Stahl is going to help them win games. Eric Stahl is carrying that big C. That's all he's doing right now.
Yeah. And Skinner's having a great year. Stahl's not having a great year. Stahl may be easier to re-sign. If you trade him, obviously Skinner won't be a UFA next year.
Look, Stahl will have a little bit of a resurgence wherever he goes. Yeah. But he's always sort of been a mostly offensive player. There's not much else Eric Stahl's ever really done.
Last one that Eck has here was on Tyler Bozak. I won't concentrate on that, but he mentions the Anaheim Ducks. I think we're going to see a Ducks deal before the 29th. They're probably going to want to add some forward help because they have all that backlog on the blue line. A Bozak, I'm not sure how much of a fit that is. He'd be probably a third-line center on that team behind Getzlaf and behind Kessler, and that would be actually a good fit because he'd be able to generate some offense. He's a good playmaker, and he'd fit in behind those two guys. I'm not sure if center is their crying need is more, I think more likely a scoring winger, but Russ, I do think Anaheim is going to move one of those defensemen. I don't know if it's going to be Fowler or Dupre or either of the two RFAs, but they're going to move somebody.
Yeah, they're going to move somebody. If it quacks like a duck, we know the whole analogy. It's going to happen. I'm trying to look up because the Ducks seem to be one of these teams that miss more shots on net than anybody I've seen, and the more I watch them, the more I just see good scoring chances getting blown by missed shots. It's crazy.
Yeah, and they're a team that you could see. I mean, not only the RFA defensemen like Lindholm or Vatanen, you could see them trade if there's the right player, the right fit. You could see them trading their first round pick, or you could see them trade a guy like a Nick Ritchie if it's a deal that they think is the player that will get them over the top. That could be an Eric Stahl. It could. And I mean, if that's the case, I mean, I don't think. I mean, Bob Murray, I think, is in the same position that Jim Rutherford is in Pittsburgh, and that Gorton is in with the Rangers. The window is very small.
Yeah.
And like Doug Wilson in San Jose, he overpaid 2 second-round picks for a bottom-pairing defenseman and a depth forward. And I think that these contending teams, especially if they can trade cap room or trade players that take up cap room back in these deals, will pay a premium to make these trades.
All right, so here's a fun stat for all the advanced stats guys. Sportingcharts.com has a stat where it's listed where it takes like shots missed, shots blocked, all of that into, and it gives you a true shooting percentage. The number one guy for Anaheim is ranked 48th in the league. It's Mike Santorelli. So that's a bad sign. And then when I'm looking for a real name, Corey Perry is 59th in the league. So what I'm basically saying is, like Getzlaf, it's nice that he's got these, 9 goals now or something like that. But how many shots has he missed? How many shots has Ryan Kessler missed? A lot.
Yeah. And finally, I mean, this situation, we'll probably have more information on it tomorrow, but there was a report out of Russia today that Ilya Kovalchuk was suspended by his team, I think it's CSKA St. Petersburg. They're just entering their playoffs right now, and he was suspended for the first game by St. Petersburg's coach, former Ranger Sergei Zubov. Now, everybody got excited when they heard, he was suspended and sent back home, and this means, oh my God, he's going to come back to the NHL.
No, but it said originally sent back because of poor play. That's what I saw originally.
Yeah.
And so if that's true, what that's telling me is Zubov is like, listen, dude, you used to be a lot better than you are. Get it together, and maybe I'll put you back in. That's what I took out of that.
Yeah. And, I mean, the things that I heard after the initial report were that if he wanted to come back to the NHL, I mean, first of all, he'd have to clear waivers to come back. It would be sort of like a Radulov situation. But the other thing is that his skills have so decompensated over the last couple of years that he wouldn't have anywhere close to the impact that he had when he was with the Devils back in 2012.
Yeah, he's nowhere close to that player. He could have a 20-goal year in the NHL, I believe that. But for the kind of money he's going to want, unless he comes at a bargain price like the NBA, when somebody comes in at that league minimum, whatever that thing's called, that slot, if he were to do something like that, a team would welcome him, but they're not going to give him a ton of money.
Yeah, the veteran exception. Yeah,
that's it, yes.
Yeah, the Larry Bird exemption.
Yep.
All right. Well, good show, Russ. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.